So you had just asked a question about idle talk. So, the textbook answer, I gave you the textbook answer, okay? And a little bit of personal commentary about, you have to, sometimes just talk about some chit-chat subjects at work or with people that you see casually, just to establish a relationship and keep up a good feeling, between people. And so you do that with awareness of why you're chit-chatting, and and with a kind heart, and you only get involved in it to the extent that is necessary. You don't spend all afternoon just chit-chatting with people. Yeah, because that isn't really necessary. And probably at work your boss wouldn't be very happy. Okay. Okay, so then I was thinking maybe I should give you a little bit of my personal reflections on that. Okay, and usually Tibetan Lamas will not share their personal reflections so much. But anyway, have mouth will talk. I will. Okay, because I was thinking, you were telling me something about, your teacher in Belgium and the students before. And I was, we've talked a little bit about being the chai shop guru, And so, idle talk can definitely be about topics concerning the Dharma. Just because the topics are the Dharma doesn't mean it's not idle talk. Because if our motivation is, to be the chai shop guru and show people how knowledgeable we are and like this and that and the other thing, we're not really talking about Dharma, we're talking about ego-boosting topics, okay? So, and so in my, when we talk about the Dharma, we have to be really clear what our motivation is, And, it's not just amusement, it's not just blah, 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 but, to really have the idea for us to learn the Dharma and to share it with others and so on, okay? When I hear the way some people talk about their teachers, it seems to me that some of it really fits into the category of idle talk. All this thing, who's your teacher in incarnation? Who's your teacher? Competition for that kind of thing. That speech is not being done to actually instill faith in other people. It's being done, just as one-upmanship because I'm associated with that person, so that means I'm important. Yeah, and it's not really done to benefit the other person or ourselves. You mentioned that some of the people were talking about how your teacher looked in his swimming trunks. That's completely idle gossip, totally inappropriate talk about somebody that you study the Dharma with, and our teachers are not objects of our chit-chat, so we can tell all these cute, funny stories, especially about something like that. So I think we have to be careful, and I think I've mentioned to you before that I remember one Dharma center in Donetsk, actually, Ukraine, where I went, and they had many teachers from different traditions there, and I was there for 5-6 days. So spent a lot of meals with them. I heard so many stories about all the different teachers that had been there. Oh, this one went to town and did this, that one went to town and that. Then we took this one shopping. Then he told us this cute story. Then he did this cute, And when I asked the people, and what did that person teach? They couldn't tell me. They didn't remember. In my mind, that's totally disgraceful. Yeah? I don't usually speak this way, but, especially I don't like the word disgraceful. But I think this is disgraceful, because if a person is coming, especially, they're way out in the middle of nowhere, you really have to exert some energy to get to Donetsk. Then they should really listen to the teachings and take them seriously and think about them. And, if they're going to talk about that teacher's visit, talk about what that person taught. Yeah? Rather than just cute stories. Okay, I think I can get off my soapbox. But I think in the West, this needs to be made clear to people, because often it's just, I don't know, it's just weird. And, I remember one time being in New York for His Holiness's teachings, and then sitting next to some other nuns, and in the break time we were talking, and they go, "Oh, my teacher, I'm sure he's at the path of seeing. Whenever he teaches emptiness, he cries. I'm sure he's a highly realized being." And I was going, to me, that way, especially the way of talking, did not give me any faith. In fact, it turned me off. Yeah. Because what good does it do for us to talk about our teacher's realizations? Does that give us realizations? Yeah? When you think of it? To me, it doesn't. And have somebody go on in flowery language about their teacher doesn't really give me any useful information, except that this person that's how that person thinks. If they were to tell stories about their teacher, and the stories really illustrated, like, for example, that teacher's compassion, or that teacher's wisdom in how to work with people, or they said something from a teaching, that would make me think, and think about the teacher's qualities. But just going on raving about somebody's realizations when you have no idea what they are, it just left me feeling like, ugh. So anyway, maybe I wasn't off my soapbox the first time. Yeah? No, I think we should, speak about our teachers in a respectful way. And, and of course people tell stories. I tell you lots of stories about my teachers. But, I think my stories have a purpose. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Then you had a question about what do monastics do if they don't have any money and they need money for medical, dental things, or to take care of their parents or their parents' funeral or something like that. Okay, so this is handled differently in different Buddhist traditions. In the traditions where they absolutely don't touch money, when a person ordains, they let their family know that they're not going to be participating in the family economy at all. And usually the benefactors or the monastery will cover their medical, dental expenses, things like that. Here at the Abbey, what we do is, people can have their own personal money, but as I was explaining before, there's certain ways they can spend it and certain ways they cannot. If somebody does not have any money and they think that they're going to have these kind of expenditures, first of all, if somebody has no money and they have medical or dental things, then obviously the Abbey, pays for that. That's very clear. As for giving money to people's families, that would not really be kosher according to, that people who give to the Abbey want the monastics to use, the organization, the Abbey, to use the money for things that the Abbey supports, not for a particular individual's family. for that particular monastic themselves, yes, of course, but not for their family. And so in that case, if somebody feels they're going to have, they should clarify, with their family, what they can cover and what they can't, and say, I'm ordaining and I'm moving from the home life into the homeless life, so I'm not going to be part of the economic system of the family. And then if they think they're going to have other expenses, let's say traveling, usually traveling to teachings, sometimes the Abbey may give that to, when people go to the Western Buddhist Monastic Conference, the Abbey pays the tickets and, things like that, so that everybody has equal access to travel for teaching. So the Abbey covers that. And if we encourage people to have their family pay for their airfare for them to go visit them. If the family won't, then the person themselves can do that. And then we tell people before they ordain, if you think you're going to need some funds, and you want to make offerings, so it's nice to have some money to make offerings with and so on, then before you ordain, you write to your old friends, you write to your family members, and you explain that you're ordaining, and you ask them if they would support you, and send whatever amount is they feel comfortable with on a monthly basis or yearly basis or whatever, and that can go into your personal account. So some people have done that. We say, please do not ask anybody who is an Abbey supporter themselves, because that just creates confusion in that person's mind. But your old friends, your family members, people who aren't Abbey supporters, then you can write to and say, I'm ordaining and I need some money, for travel or for making offerings, or it would be helpful to have more medical things, and would you be willing to contribute? And so we have people do that before they ordain. Okay. For monasteries where they have no regulations, then people use their money however they want, and they just go into town, they spend their money like a layperson, which I don't think is very helpful for people's minds, So, yeah. Does that clarify? Yeah. So, in terms of attending teachings and and staying healthy and all of that, everybody's completely equal, no matter whether you have savings or you don't have savings. When I ordained, they didn't have this kind of policy. Everybody was responsible for supporting themselves. I was part of the poor nuns or poor monastics without any support. And so there were times when I couldn't travel to go to teachings. And that didn't feel right, Some of us stayed and worked, and others went off to travel to teachings. And so I have a very strong feeling that kind of thing is absolutely not right, and that everybody should have equal access to traveling for teachings. And so the Abbey, contributes there, if the person doesn't have. Anything else? Yeah. Oh, yes. Thank you. Okay. So talking about the Garudharmas and self-confidence. I think one of the something that is very important for everybody in practicing the Dharma is a sense of self-confidence. If you don't believe in yourself, then it's going to be very difficult to really exert energy in the practice, because you're going to tell yourself before you start, I'm incapable, it's too difficult. Yeah. And His Holiness, repeatedly says that if you're going to follow the Bodhisattva path, that you need very strong self-confidence. So this kind of self-confidence is not self-grasping. And it's not self-centeredness. It's an awareness of one's Buddha nature. It's awareness that we have seeds of all of the good qualities in our minds already, and so we have that potential there, and we can increase that potential and act on it. And so having that kind of awareness and self-confidence is extremely important for practicing the Dharma. Yeah? Otherwise we shoot ourselves in the foot. Yeah? Because before we even do anything, we say, a person like me can't do that. I'm too stupid. I'm not educated. I'm too angry. I'm this. I'm that. And so we don't even try. And of course, if you don't try, you don't get anywhere. Okay? So self-confidence is very important. What I find, in terms of, for Westerners, I think having self-confidence in the Dharma is difficult. One of our biggest issues is low self-esteem and self-loathing. And I've found this pretty much amongst most Westerners. There's one part in everybody that says, I just don't like myself, or I'm not worthwhile. Yeah? And that it's a huge hindrance for us. I think things in the Dharma that are understood in certain ways can be used to lessen somebody's self-confidence. And so I think that one way the Garu Dharmas are interpreted cuts the self-confidence of the nuns. You know? Because if people are thinking, okay, no matter how long I'm ordained, I always bow, to the junior monk, and depending on the monks for this and that, and having to go to the monks for instruction twice a month, and the monks always reminding you that you're supposed to bow to them and do this kind of thing, and how women often in Asia the status of the women practitioners, the status, the ability to practice of the women practitioners is very much correlates to whether they have bhikshuni ordination or not. Okay? So here, countries like China, Korea, Vietnam, where they have bhikshuni ordination, the nuns are educated, they are active, they really reach out and do a lot of beneficial services for people. They're well respected in the society. They teach, they have confidence. Okay? In countries where they're, like in Thailand, where the most a woman can take is the 8 precepts and wear white, and where they aren't really considered monastics at all, then the nuns, many of those women lack self-confidence, and also because because they are not considered as Sangha, then they wind up being the caretakers of the temples, cooking the food, serving the monks, doing all the errands, and, being the gophers for the monks, and society doesn't think much of them. Not that societal respect is important, but, when society doesn't think well, then you have no opportunity to teach or to guide. And so many of those Maichis have difficulties getting education, So it depends on the particular monastery or temple that they're in. Some can get a good education, some can't. In the Tibetan tradition, they can take the 10 precepts, and they're considered nuns. In Sri Lanka, they take the 10 precepts, but they may be called nuns, but they're not really considered Sangha. They're also in this gray area. Yeah. But in the Tibetan tradition, they're considered nuns, but, the Shramanera ordination is, the way the Shramanera ordination came about I know I'm going off. I have to give you all this other information before I get back to my point. The Shramanera, or novice ordination, it came about because at the Buddhist time, there were young children who wanted to ordain. So they ordained the young children as bhikshus. But then, they were crying at night because they had to keep all the precepts and it was too hard for them and they were crying. So the Buddhists, out of compassion said, okay, for the young people, they take the Shramanera ordination. Then once they're 20 years of age, then they can take the full ordination. So the Shramanera ordination was designed for children or for people, let's say, who were very elderly, who couldn't keep the monastic schedule, who had certain, it was difficult for them. Yeah, so it was designed for them. So it's actually seen as a stepping stone, something you do temporarily before you take bhikshuni ordination. In the Tibetan tradition, there's no bhikshuni lineage. They don't take the ordination, so the nuns are in, the state of being shamaneres for forever. Okay, unless you do like what I did and go to Taiwan, which is difficult for the Tibetan nuns themselves. Much easier for the Western nuns to do. And so the way the nuns are treated in Tibetan society, and the way they're thought of, definitely in Tibetan society, women are thought of as inferior, as not as capable of learning, as less intelligent. And, that's why until recent years, the nuns did not have access to a good education. And it's only been under His Holiness's influence that the education for the nuns has really changed in the last, I would say, 20, maybe 30 years. And so now you have some of the nuns being able to take the geshe degrees and and so on. So, but all of that, their whole view about women combined with the inability to have the bhikshuni ordination, nuns are thought of and treated in a certain way in the Tibetan tradition, and it eats away at your self-confidence. Yeah, and it was very strange for me because, I grew up as I did better than my brother in school, blah, 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 blah. So I didn't, my parents were like this, and I didn't grow up with this thing of, I'm a woman, I can't do this and that, except all I can do is screw in a light bulb because they never let me tuck shop. When in 8th grade I had to take home ec. But I found, and I lived in the Tibetan community for years, and things aren't always said overtly, you're not, sometimes the Western monks were the ones who would say things overtly. They would say, you should pray to be born as a woman in your next life, as a man in your next life. Hey, we're Westerners. Why are you talking to me like that? Yeah? Anyway, but I found when I came back to the States that my self-confidence had taken a plunge just by being in that environment. Even though things weren't directly said, I just noticed I'm a lot more hesitant. I'm a lot more meek, even though I could never be like the Tibetan nuns. Yeah, but so I really saw that, and I said, okay, I got to change this. Yeah, but I really see it in my friends who are Tibetan nuns and how they don't dare speak up about things and always kind of like this. And when we were at His Holiness's teachings a couple of years back, we Westerners you were there, remember we were sitting inside, and there was plenty of space around us. So we said to some of our friends, the Tibetan nuns, come and sit inside the hall with us. There's space. They said, oh no, we can't do that. Yeah, we can't do that. They wouldn't even consider it. Yeah? So, because that would be being too forward. Yeah. And I know when I first, I'm going way off on a tangent, oh well. When I first, ordained in 1977, and I was living in the Tibetan community, then, my role models were the Tibetan nuns, and so I tried to be like them. That's so. You don't ask any questions. You're bent over like this. Your eyes are down. Now, can you imagine me keeping that kind of thing for very long? That's over. That's giving me more credit that's due. It's like I was an educated person. I had a job. I was brought up in an educational system where you ask questions, and where you state your opinion. And I couldn't be like this, So I just had to be me, and, okay, whatever it is. But I see my friends who are the Tibetan nuns, and how, because they've been like that for years and they were conditioned like that, it's difficult for them. Okay? So, getting back to the 8 Garu Dharmas and self-esteem, when the 8 Garu Dharmas are used in such a way to lessen somebody's self-esteem, I think that is going against the Buddha's intention. Yeah, because the Buddha clearly wants everybody, he wants all sentient beings to become fully awakened. He doesn't want things in social systems that are going to discourage people from using their potential or make them feel like they have no potential. Yeah. And so that's why I think you have to see those things in a certain way and not let them affect your self-confidence, because that would really be going against what the Buddha wanted. Okay? Anybody want to debate me on it? If you were all Tibetan monks, you would all have your hands up right now.
What would you say to somebody who said that, don't have self-confidence, it doesn't matter if you're bowing to the novice monks every day?
If you have your own internal sense of self-confidence, it doesn't matter who you bow to, okay? But many people don't have that strong internal self-confidence. And also, just the conditioning in one way or another affects you over time. Yeah. And also, what's very interesting is actually, according to Vinaya, the Shramaneras, the male novices, are supposed to bow to the bhikshunis. Yeah. The Tibetans do not agree with that in any way, shape, or form. Yeah? Not that they have Tibetan bhikshunis, but, in there's a passage in the ordination thing, that they wouldn't do that even if they had bhikshunis. Yeah? So, if you have a very strong practice, I don't think it would influence you so much. But if you don't have a strong practice, or even if you had to do that, if you didn't have a strong practice, it would influence you, definitely. And it would, I think, the bowing to the monks is not so much what influences you, it's how the monks act when you're bowing to them that influences you. Yeah? There's some monks that are, when you bow to them, they are bent over, they are very humble. You can tell they just see this as a formality, and they could care less about it. There's other monks who, it's like, well, you're being a good nun, yeah, or something like that. So for me personally, that's what affected me more, was that kind of thing. So, of course, when I go to see senior monks, of course I bow to them, because I really respect them. So why wouldn't I bow to somebody I respect? Yeah. You know, monks that are my friends, that are my peers, in Tibetan society, it doesn't feel so comfortable to bow to them. And I don't think they would want it, you know, because we've been friends for a long time. Yeah. Of course, if you're a novice, you know, when I was still a novice, and we did the posada, then we had to go and bow to our peers, you know, who were monks, because that's part of the posada ceremony. But aside from that, you know, we didn't. You know, again, I think sometimes people can make just too big a deal about this whole thing, and sometimes also similarly about where you sit. Oh, sometimes at teachings it's like, you know, everybody wants to sit in the front row and elbowing everybody else out of the front row. And you can usually tell who are the newest people ordained, because they're the ones who are the pushiest to get to the front row. And the ones who have been ordained the longest. This is amongst the Westerners. The Tibetans are very considerate about, or, you know, where they sit and things, and letting the seniors go first. The Westerners, they don't care. Even lay people go and sit in front of the Sangha. Yeah? Western lay people sit in front of the Sangha. They sit in front of the Tibetan Sangha too. I mean, and even the Singaporeans. I was horrified. You heard me how I talked. Yeah. So, you know, I think, I mean, for people who've been ordained a long time and who definitely know more than you, I mean, I respect them. I want to sit in front. Yeah. Now I'm in the position of being a senior nun, so everybody pushes in front of me to sit in the front. And I could care less. It's like, because now I've been at His Holiness's teaching so many times, you know, I've had the privilege of sitting in his teachings for years and years. I don't need a seat where I can see him. I don't need to sit in front of everybody else. If people are new and they want to see him, please go sit in front. That's completely okay with me. You know? And I would rather just sit in the back and be comfortable. Yeah, rather than having people step on me. Yeah, so, I don't know. I'm really getting way off and distracted. You had something? Uh-huh.
The thing with self-confidence for Western men and women, I think there's a problem with what Dr. David points out, with where we equate self-importance and self-confidence. I think that's kind of the root of our problem a lot of times, is that we build ourselves up on confidence at shaky ground, and we don't, something in us knows it's shaky, and so we really don't have a true self-confidence. And so then we have to inflate ourselves with this certain kind of self-importance that we're generally unaware of. So we're not aware of pride, the relative behavior, in our culture, everything supports it. You know, and so I think for us, it's our dangling. And I think for the Western monks that, you know, need this, people bowing to them, it's rooted in any nuns in any way we do talk. I think that's kind of the root of the problem. I don't know, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
So it's bringing those two as separate things.
Yeah.
It really helps.
Yeah, really seeing self-importance and self-confidence is two different ball games. Very, very much. Yeah, that's extremely important, because when we don't believe in ourselves, like you said, then we tend towards pride. Yeah, because we have to fortify ourselves in one way or another, so we get proud artificially over things. Now, whereas you see somebody like His Holiness who has real self-confidence, he has the freedom to be humble. His mind doesn't need to, you know, say, look what I know, look what I've accomplished, look who I am. Yeah. So that, to me, is indicative of real self-confidence. You had something? Oh, okay. Who else did you?
Has His Holiness made comment or occasion
let me think. Over the one of novices this statement in one of the ordination texts about the novices, he says that needs to be changed. He would like that changed because that's really something that was added later. I think he doesn't mention about the seating thing, or if he does, he says it's because usually the monks sit in front and the nuns back. He doesn't say much about it. Or if he did, he said, it doesn't really matter where you sit. Yeah. And I think, in one way, because it really doesn't matter where you sit. But second of all, if he tried to change that, all hell would break loose. It's funny, isn't it? That you'd think that this wouldn't be something important to spiritual practitioners. But I think it would completely it would make the monks really not open to having bhikshuni ordination or anything like that if the seating arrangement were to change. Lama Yeshe changed the seating arrangement for the Sangha when he was alive. And he had the monks on one side, the nuns on the other side. Yeah? And so everybody was equal, in terms of that. We sat in seniority according to women, men, our own seniority within that. And that worked very well for Westerners, and Lama that's the way he wanted it. And he held that up, even in front of the Tibetans, when there were Tibetans present. Zopa Rinpoche is different. It's kind of, in many contexts, gone back to the old way of, when we're with the Tibetans, definitely the monks are in front. And Westerners, I don't know. It probably depends where the teachings are being held, where the nuns sit. But after a while, you just get so bored with this issue. After a while, it's like, even I go to teachings and some, the monks, junior monks sit in front. Fine, go ahead, it's okay. Doesn't, junior nuns sit in front. Yeah, that's fine, go ahead. It's like, I'm too bored with that. Mm-hmm.
When it says that the nun bows to one,
It's usually taken to mean an actual bow. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
In that case, would it be inappropriate for a monk to
Well, definitely putting your hands up like that would be completely okay. But yeah, to the same extent, definitely. Yeah, I know when Reverend Master Echo, he was from Shasta Abbey, when he visited here, he made it a point to bow to the abbess in front of everybody so that everybody saw. Because he had a very firm belief in gender equality. But he was a Westerner. Yeah. But I think, among Westerners, we really need to act according to our culture. And we really need, to respect each other. Yeah, respecting each other, I think, is so important, because if we can't respect other practitioners, then how are we going to respect ourselves? Yeah? And especially with Westerners, sometimes, Westerners have lots of respect for Tibetans and no respect for other Westerners. Because it's another kind of racism, because there's this idea of, if you are a Tibetan monk, you must be holy. And if you're a Tibetan, you must be holy. And this is the Shangri-La kind of attitude that the Westerners imputed on the Tibetans, and the Tibetans don't mind it. Yeah, they don't mind it. But it's a society like any other society. And you have all kinds of people there, and people have all kinds of motivations. And yes, they have these teachings. And yes, they probably have more realized beings than any other society. But that doesn't mean everybody who's Tibetan, or everybody who's Thai, or everybody who's Burmese, or Sri Lankan, or Mongol, whatever it is highly realized, you know. There's just ordinary people. So, what you often see is because people kind of idealize Tibetans, that anybody who's a Tibetan must be holy. We bow to them. Anybody who's a Westerner grew up with Mickey Mouse like me. So I'm Mickey Mouse, they're Mickey Mouse. We're all musketeers together. Why should I show them any respect? Okay? So I think that is actually undermining of our own self-confidence. Yeah, because if you assume that somebody's a Westerner, therefore they don't know much, then you're assuming that you're a Westerner and also therefore you're incapable. Yeah, whereas, you know, the more we can see the good qualities in other people and point those out and respect them and honor and appreciate those good qualities, the more open we're making ourselves to generate those same good qualities. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I found it very helpful yesterday when they were just pointing out what it's important to come back to what serves the Dharma. Like, doesn't matter where I sit, it doesn't help me get away from it. That helps me to drop a lot of wisdom to really learn cultural. Because I mean, I experienced that as a workplace too, when I was educated here. I came here from college and I went back and I was questioning things and then even come back to just being shameless. You know?
It's just what? Shameless.
The question publicly, especially your boss.
Ah.
Accepting, and that was just the way I was taught to question and college in the US, right? So I'm asking questions for the benefit of the group as well as not.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was like, who is this ridiculous junior officer asking questions of the boss like this? No shame. So it took me a while to learn that and that if I wanted a good outcome, I had to work at in a way that was culturally specific.
Yes.
Without getting angry, like, the male boss,
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, to having that sensitivity according to the culture, you know. And that's why, you know, you have some Western women who go into the Tibetan society and it's just, this is patriarchal, this is discriminatory, you know, the UN has this bill for the equality of women and you aren't following it, and you know, the Tibetans just tune them out. And, you know, if you say it in a calm voice, they might listen a little bit, but they'll tune you out later. If you say it in an assertive, you know, voice, completely just the tone of your voice, they won't even listen because they say you're angry. Why should I listen to somebody who's angry? Mm-hmm. So, so definitely in an Asian setting, you have to act differently. And you have to do it in a culturally appropriate way. You know? But, huh? Yeah, sometimes it is. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do you think of the work some of the other Western monastics are doing, like Unintended Palmo and Monastic Palmo, who are also, I guess, your contemporaries? Oh
yeah, I mean, we have a in 2006, His Holiness gave Venerable Jampa Sedran some money and said, I want you and other Western nuns to work on the Bhikshuni issue. And so at that point it was formed, what did we call it? Committee of Western Bhikshunis. Now we've changed the name to Committee for Bhikshuni Ordination. But yeah, so, you know, Venerable Lekshe and Venerable Jampa and Jetsun Ma and, you know, a few others of us are, we work together on this issue, and, you know, we meet together sometimes even though we're all over the place in different countries. So, you know, we all share this issue, you know, this heartfelt wish that there can be bhikshunis in the Tibetan tradition. Our ways of going about things are not always the same. Okay? I spent more time Lekshe spent a lot of time in Asia, but different perspective, So Venerable Lekshe, Venerable Jampa, also Jetsunma, much more confrontational, I would say. I'm much more, because I just know what works in Tibetan culture and what doesn't. So I'm much more like this, okay? So we're working on the same cause. We don't always agree on everything, but, we do work together. Yeah, and they're good friends, and, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you think there is more less of self-confidence in the West?
Why is there a greater lack of self-confidence in the West than in the East? This came up at one of the Mind Life conferences with His Holiness, where somebody was talking about that, and His Holiness was so puzzled, Why do you have low self-esteem? And, there was John Kabat-Zinn in the room, and Francisco Varela, and, all these people. His Holiness, because you're so successful in your own fields. Why do you, because he said, who lacks self-esteem? And everybody said me. And he said, why? You're so successful. Why do you lack self-esteem? So then started a brainstorming thing. Okay? So one idea was the Christian notion of original sin, and whether you were taught that as a child or whether it just came through the culture, that somehow you are tainted by birth. And there's nothing you can do about it, So that could be a contributing factor. Another one could be this emphasis we have on, I must be a unique, successful individual. Yeah? And there's so much emphasis on personal success in the West, on standing out, on being somebody. Yeah, just you, not your group or anything, but just you. And that puts a lot of tension on the individual to succeed and be somebody. And of course, not everybody can. Like I was saying before, especially in a global situation, there's only one person on the planet that's best, whereas in ancient times, at least every village had one person who's best in a certain field. Yeah, but now just, there's one chess champion for the whole wide world. So, yeah, so that puts stress on people. So then if you don't make the top grade, you feel you lose your confidence. And if you do make the top grade, you know that you can't maintain it forever. Phelps cannot continually win however many Olympic medals he won every single Olympic. His body is aging. It's not going to happen. Yeah. So so as soon as you attain something high, there's also the anxiety of knowing that you can't maintain it. Yeah? So that gives you low self-esteem. Now, what's going to happen when somebody's better than me? Okay? Then, our whole educational system where we're given grades. And, Western education fits certain kinds of people. It doesn't fit other kinds of people. And it has nothing to do with how intelligent you are. But they make it seem as if it does. So if you know how to do the Western education system, you are told that you're intelligent. If that is not your way of being as a human being, you don't like that system, you are told that you're dumb. Yeah? And it really has nothing to do with being dumb or intelligent. It has to do with people's individual ways of learning, what is important to individual people. Okay? In Singapore, they start streaming the kids from age 9. You have to take exams at age 9. And according to your exams at age 9, you are streamed you are said to be, okay, this one's a slow learner. That means you're dumb. This one is this one is this. They categorize people at age 9 and stream them, and they never have any other opportunity after that to learn more advanced subjects or go to better schools or anything. And to me, I mean, that's awful, because there are a lot of people, when they're young, they don't care about school. They don't want to learn in that kind of fashion. But they're very bright and they're very creative, and they blossom later. And so when we make systems that keep people down like that, I think it's not only bad for the individual, but bad for society. But the point is here, it makes people unnecessarily lose their self-confidence. Okay? And you may have some other ideas. Why do you think we have such a problem with self-confidence here? Yeah, okay, yeah. Competition is so much emphasized. Yeah. Social competition, academic competition, athletic competition, everything competition. In the but it plays out in a very different way. When you are Asian, your identity is you are a member of this group. You are not an individual who stands out. You are a member of this group. So your job is to protect the whole group and protect the reputation of the whole group. Yeah. So you dare not do anything naughty or be, pretentious or put yourself up, because that is not being a good member of the group. It's a very different concept of how we all have the self-grasping ignorance, but this is more a learned concept of I, and it's different. And to give you an illustration, okay, one person I know was telling, she was Chinese, and she was educated in the U.S., I mean, she was Chinese American. So at her high school graduation, they were praising, all the students who were the honor students. So when the principal was praising her eyes were down. Yeah, and because that's what you're taught. Yeah, you do. It is not good to put yourself up and be arrogant and proud, and it reflects very badly on your family if you act in that way. So her eyes were down, very humble. Yeah, and she noticed all of her other Caucasian friends, or African American friends, when they were being praised. Here I am. Look at me. I'm so happy you're noticing me. Yeah. So a very different culture. Yeah.
Uh-huh. How come you felt like when you came back from England you had lost self-confidence?
What do you mean, how come I felt that?
You said you had gone to Asia.
Yeah, right. And how did I know that I had lost self-confidence?
I
Or
think the West is somehow less confident, but you seem to be more confident.
no, I lost self-confidence when I came back. I noticed I had lost self-confidence when I came back here, not because of Western culture, but because of the subtle message I had received about women when I was in the Tibetan community.
Yeah, and so I think what you were saying before is that the West needs to be less confident than the East, but yet you were in the East practicing and had lost.
Yes, but I was in the East. I was an Inji. I was a woman. And I was a nun. At least lay women have more status in the Tibetan community. They run the businesses. Yeah. There's some, not very many, lay women in the Tibetan government or whatever. Yeah. Nuns, zip. Yeah, and Westerners, from the viewpoint of Tibetans, you're not a real Buddhist. Yeah. Yeah, the Chinese, Thai, those other systems are much more welcoming in many ways, When I would go to Taiwan, if they were, even I was a guest at a monastery, if they were taking a group photo, they would put me in the front row in the middle. Tibetans would never do that. Yeah.
And I don't know how this affects confidence, but I remember we were talking about this, but one thing that really struck me reading from Western moral philosophy is that the starting point for the Westerner is that you're an individual and entitled to certain rights. And that to me is a mind-boggling concept, to be honest. Because the one I grew up with is that your body and hair is a gift of your parents, so you're responsible that way. The starting point is gratitude, but that is key. You do these things, and you have to pay it back in some way. And that's the responsibility of the individual, going to the larger group. And like you said, standing out is like a bad idea. And if you have certain talents and gifts, you have to give that. And it's your responsibility. And you're not a bad person.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different set of.
Right. But I think you really hit it there, that the starting point in the East is gratitude for what you've received. The starting point in the West is I'm here and I'm entitled.
How does that affect your self-confidence?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would think, if your starting point is gratitude, you feel embedded in a social structure where people care about you. If your starting point is I'm an individual and I have rights, then it means there's other people who are trying to deny my rights and not give me what I want. So then I have to.
But then I think the downside of it, from what I've observed, the Asian confidence is that it allows you to internalize oppression in some ways, and when you don't have, when you should speak up and you don't, it's like you're saying, oh, I can't, they self-censor a lot.
Yeah.
In behavior, in voicing out, and in participating, and in accept the status they've been given. And like you've been saying, it's counterbalancing.
Yeah, I'm definitely not saying one way is better or worse than the other. But because the Asian way of so much self-censorship. Yeah. It's really, and just accepting your position. Because that's what I found hard, it's like, oh, I'm a woman, I'm an Inji, this is how I should be. No. Yeah. Okay, you had something?
The thing I think about self-esteem is that, it's different on this planet. You can have a child and you can. But in the West, families over time have become more and more isolated. Things are going bad. Things are going very bad. And there's no other sort of interaction with the village or the town or the, society.
Yeah.
And there's this, isolated thing going on.
Yeah, we are in the West very isolated. Yeah, like you said, you don't have the feeling of support from family, from the village, whatever. And now even in homes, everybody has their own TV in their own room. Everybody has their own computer, their own cell phone. People tell me that mom's, in a different room, so you text her. Yeah? So, more and more isolation, and it's seen as good. I have my whatever. I don't have to share it with anybody else. And that's seen as good in the West, but it creates a feeling of isolation, which I think affects people's self-confidence, because you don't have this feeling that underneath it all, people are caring for you.
The one thing I appreciate a lot about Western culture is maybe things were a lot of times Westernized people in the West, they try to affect change by, we're going to do these laws or sign this piece of paper. And yeah, cosmetically the change can occur, but is it on the ground how it gets implemented is something else. Like, I'm not just thinking about bikini. I can see why you've taken that approach with bikini or the different.
Yeah.
It's not just about the ceremony. It's really what happens on the ground over time.
Yeah.
How it gets embedded in the culture.
Yeah.
I have friends like that. Who just wants the government to sign a piece of paper, like it's not going to do anything on the ground.
Right. Right. Changing people's minds is much harder than passing a law. Mm-hmm.
That's the same in the West. I think, certain things get changed and a lot of times it's on paper and it's things
Yeah. Right. Racism in this country is a good example of that. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Kind of a different tack, but I think the idea that affects the self-esteem in the West, when culture is the way that we sexualize things from a young age.
Mm.
When you're really, really young now, things are brought up that way, and the whole thing about like body image, it's so distorted, and it's so confusing for teenagers. And to the point that, the percentage of young men who take testosterone in high school, or steroids in high school,
Mhm.
to be more muscular, and just all these things, I think that the particular level of the body and how you do yourself
Mhm.
in society, I don't really think that that's going to be culture as much as it is the Western culture. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
gotten there and getting there.
Yeah, it's definitely getting there.
But no one really adds up.
Mhm.
You're never good enough. You have to change everything about yourself to fit in.
Right.
To be whatever it is you're supposed to
Yeah, and that's the message of the media and advertising is you are not good enough, therefore you need to buy
be. Yeah, and
X,
it's
Y.
expressing of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's really expressed. It's really doing it.
Yeah. You had something?
I was told that I think it's Christmas.
Okay. Uh-huh. Oh.
What I want to speaking is probably also how parents are affected nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
When I read books about, for example, how to get things done, especially now like their children, there's so much more, or seems to be in the past, so much more focus on the children, or the children are not necessarily home the whole day on the going with these public kindergartens and Victoria on, and then my kids were just prepared that we had to leave home just -8 or 6 weeks, so because their mother had to work after 9 months. So there's so many types of influences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, very much. Creating a sense of isolation. Yeah. You had something?
Oh, I was going to say, some people like to be think about it's kind of an ego thing. If someone says, oh, I'm so bad, and then you have other people kind of still keep up with them.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. Yeah. Sometimes when we are into our big self-loathing or our self-pity, it's actually a way of manipulating other people to pay attention to us. And, feel sorry for me too and tell me how wonderful I am. Yeah? We do that, don't we?
I saw a lot in college too. Like people who like achieve a lot. Like I know this too. Like it's worse with like people who do even better. Like they say like, oh, I'm so horrible. I got not in the class. And something too that like kind of got like started is like the implicit kind of like thing that like, oh, everybody else is like worse than me, but I could even do even better.
It's a subtle way of putting oneself up. Yeah. By putting oneself down. Yeah. Yeah. This whole thing of comparing ourselves to others is a big issue for us. Okay, now we're going to change the topic for the discussion group. So anyway, what I was going to talk about today, I didn't talk about. But I think this kind of conversation is kind of important, for setting up monasteries and monastic systems in the West. Yeah, and that's why, again, setting up the Abbey, being very clear, we're setting it up in a Western way. And many people ask me, well, what's going to happen, to the Abbey after I die? And I don't know, but certainly people, can teach each other. They can invite another teacher. But regardless of who's teaching, you should really keep the structure as we have it now that's done in a Western way. Yeah, because the way Tibetans organize monasteries and Dharma centers is very different. There's the person at the top and everybody else down here, and everybody just reveres the guru and only listens to the guru, and so people don't learn to cooperate amongst each other. Yeah, and I think our Western way, where we all share our knowledge and abilities and we work things out by working together, that works much better in our cultural situation. Having one person, especially if you bring somebody in from outside who's a Tibetan who, if they're going to be a Dharma teacher, great, that's really good. But then if they're thinking they're going to run the Abbey according to the Tibetan model of how you do things, I don't think that would work here. Mm-hmm.
When we talk about individuals and community,
Mm-hmm.
it really needs to be in a way like a balance between body and mind.
Yeah.
In a way that we were very inanimate example. Part of an engine doesn't run the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, what's the proper engine?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the Western, in our society, because we especially mentally concentration community,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a work idea of individuals in a way that doesn't show that part of being an individual.
Yeah. That's a very good point. That we, in our building up of ourselves as an individual, it isn't emphasized that part of being an individual is learning how to be a member of a community. Yeah. And so you have, in the West, what I've found is, people ordaining and really wanting community, but not knowing how to make community, and not wanting to give up any of their own, I want what I want when I want it, in order to have community. So that creates a certain amount of friction, because it's like, this is my Dharma practice, and I'm entitled, and I want this, and these are the conditions that I need for my Dharma practice, without realizing, as you said, hey, I'm a member of a community. There's other people who have those same needs, and if the community functions well, they support me in a way that is really wonderful. Yeah, instead of me just being this individual, fighting for everything I want in the community. Very good point. Yeah, so I really see many people in the West, wanting community, not knowing how to do it, and not really wanting to give up doing what they want to do when they want to do it in order to have community. And when you live in a community, you have to give that up. Otherwise the community doesn't function, or otherwise you're discussing one issue ad infinitum. Yeah. That's why sometimes in our morning meetings we start that, and everybody has a different idea about how to do something, and you just have to stop and say, no, these two people are going to decide and implement it. Yeah. I remember, none of you were here, you can ask Venerable Semke and Chuni. There was a Vajrasattva retreat in the 90s we did in Canada. And And so the group there, I was doing my own private retreat, but they were doing a retreat, and they were voting on how much milk to have, and because everybody wanted a different amount of milk, and the people who were running the retreat were only going to buy so much, and said, how much do you, so they had to vote on how much milk to have. So there were a couple of Mexicans there and somebody from Singapore, and they're scratching their head going, what? Why are you voting about how much milk to have? In our countries, one person would decide and everybody else accepts it. And it's just easier, isn't it, than voting on every single thing and having to have an opinion on every single thing. Yeah. Yeah. So when you're when you're a member of a community, you have to learn to adjust. Yeah. And that's why, some of our internal policy is designed to help us adjust to being an individual in a group. And you see that on some of the internal policies, some people have a real problem with it. Yeah? For example, every year, people change rooms. Yeah? And when you change rooms, you have to leave the blankets, the tables, the furnishings in the room that you're vacating. All you take with is, your personal stuff. For some people. But I like that blanket. And if I don't have that blanket and I have to use the blanket in this room, I'm too hot. And then I can't sleep well, and if I don't sleep well, I can't get up for morning meditation. So why can't I take the blanket from my old room into my new room? Besides, that blanket matches the carpeting better, and in my old room, I have my own carpet that I used to have when I was a lay person that I offered to the Abbey, but it's still mine. And it's in my room, and the blanket matches the little rug, and I want to take both of them with me because then I feel more at home, I feel more stable. Then I'll be a happier community member, and you'll all benefit. So let me have what I want. Okay? So you see, the part of being a monastic isn't just precept number 1, precept number 2. It's like developing this kind of mind that doesn't cling and attach, that is more flexible. Yeah? Okay? So that was just one example. We have, I'm sure, all sorts of them, right? Anybody else want to give another example? Yeah. Yeah. Or everything, yeah. I mean, everybody goes to Venerable Yeshe. There isn't enough cheese. I want more cheese. There isn't enough eggs. I need more eggs. There isn't enough oatmeal. I need more oatmeal. There isn't enough this, And it's like, if I don't have the kind of food I need, if I don't get enough protein, I'm going to die within the next week. And it is your job to, right? And this is how they come and talk to you. And, they're a little bit politer, but this is the basic message, And, yeah. And so you need, I want bananas in the evening. I don't want bananas at the breakfast. You always put bananas out at breakfast time. Why don't you put them out in the evening when I want to eat them? And if I don't have enough bananas, I'm going to die from not having enough potassium.
We don't say it like this because we've refined the message. Emotionally like that.
Yeah, emotionally like that. But yeah, you're right. Yeah.
We haven't refined the message. We wish we had.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, so inside is blah, but outside very sweet talk. Dear Dear Venerable Yeshu, please, could you put bananas out for breakfast? Pretty please. You know, we had one person when he was staying here. Every time he wanted something, he had a certain body posture. So I knew whenever he came to talk to me and he stood in a certain way, he was going to ask for something. Yeah, you.
Yeah, he walked and strolled like that. I can actually do it, I'm sure.
Yeah. 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 Which is, you know, I wanted to comment about this group because I was really impressed the other day when I saw that the chipper had arrived, you know, early, and some of you were out there helping to unload the chipper. Yeah. And then yesterday, after you finished washing the dishes, you know, you guys didn't want a break. You just went to the forest immediately. It's this kind of, I think, team spirit that really feeds everybody in a community. You know, instead of the mind that says, I did it last time. It's your turn. Let's make a rota. Yes, teenage brothers and sisters. Yeah.
And mom says, fine, I'll do it.
Yeah, right.
And your time while she's doing the dishes, arguing about who should have done the dishes.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you don't realize how much of a teenager you still are until you move into a monastery. Yeah. I did it last time. It's your turn.
You don't realize how much you live your life so that you're just around people you get along with.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're with people that, wow, I don't have any friends who act like this. And then you're like that too.
Yeah.
Well, that's the path to enlightenment.
Yeah. 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 That's it. Yeah. Manjushri isn't sitting there going, you know, I'm the best Buddha. Look at my sword. Chenrezig doesn't have a sword.
Got 4 on it, not just 2.
Right. Yeah. What are you talking about? Look, I have more arms than you.